Welcome to the Fourthstream podcast, where we are dedicated to finding hope. You can count on us to do our research and invite you into a dynamic learning process of authenticity. You can find lots of hopeful resources at fourthstream.com.
I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. I've been contemplating this for a number of years in light of how I've been living out my own life as far as the quality of life and what I want to accomplish in my life. I did serve as a soldier, so I kind of have a little bit of perspective on that, which I think has been really good for me. I also, I'm not much of an athlete, but I did different things, played different sports, so I get that. And I have grown a few things and have a property that we do outdoor things on. So I've got a sense, and we come from an agrarian part of the world. So I've been around farming for a long time. So looking at the idea of these metaphors of being a soldier and of being an athlete or a runner, and then also living my life as somebody who's cultivating crops. Has been just really, really good for me. And that's a little bit what I'd like to talk about today. When you look at these three different metaphors, you see different things. There are some similarities, but there are also some differences in all of them. Being dedicated and team-focused seem to be the big part of being a soldier. And we'll develop that a little bit. But personal dedication comes together with team dedication in order for soldiers to be successful. So that's a little bit of the backdrop of this broad conversation about something we can go way into more later, but for right now, then the idea of training and running to win, because it's not just the race. If you don't get ready for the race, then it doesn't really accomplish what needs to be accomplished. So, and I'm noticing in the camera right now that my glasses are kind of shining back and forth, so I'll do my best to correct that next time. But you're so engaged in what we're talking about that I'm sure it doesn't matter to you. So training and running, personally dedicated and team focused. And then when you add the picture of a farmer, and I think these three are meant to go together as far as a spiritual man or a spiritual woman, the idea of cultivating and waiting, because it's a lot of hard work to be a farmer, but there are only so many things that are ultimately in your control. Now, this comes out of 1 Corinthians 9, and it's really, really interesting. And I use it out of the Message because I think it just amplifies that a little bit. It's one of the translations of the Bible if you're not used to those conversations. The Jesus Message, I didn't just want to talk about it. I wanted to be in on it. So think about this in the context of a soldier and a farmer and an athlete. You've all been to the stadium and you've seen athletes race. Everyone runs. One wins. Run to win. All good athletes train hard. They do it for a gold medal that tarnishes and fades. You're after one that's gold eternally. And I don't know about you, but I'm running hard for the finish line. I'm giving it everything I've got. No sloppy living for me. I'm staying alert and in top condition, and I'm not going to get caught napping, telling everyone else all about it, and then missing out on it myself. And I just like how he put that in that translation, because I really feel this way about myself as a person and as a man. I want all three of these metaphors to be true in my life, and I don't want it to last. You probably stop major running by the time you're 40, right? And you probably stop being a soldier, active duty, probably in your 30s, maybe your 40s if you're one of those crazy SEALs like we see on TV and on streaming. And then farmers, they just seem to work forever. So you put all that stuff together and you come up with a picture, an image of what life can look like all the way to the duration of your life, whether it's 30 years or 50 years or 70 years or 90 years. So to return to these three metaphors and then think about them a little bit and think about them as far as what you may have learned and what I may have learned in these kinds of experiences. The work of a soldier is is disciplined, and at times it's very messy. He or she must follow orders, which can be difficult, and they have to take risks and practice selflessness, and like I put in here, and sometimes eat marginal food. I found that to be true in my own military experience. But basically, discipline is required, and it's messy because it's one thing when you do your training and you're preparing for war, but then when you go to war, then it can be very, very messy. And so that makes me think of several things related to being a soldier that I've kind of experienced a little bit. Ask the question, what is the nature of the war in which we find ourselves in? In what ways are we actually fighting? I don't know how you feel about that with your life. I personally feel like I'm in a spiritual fight. I feel like life is a challenge and a little bit of a fight. But what is the nature of the war that you live in? What are you fighting against? Who is the enemy, and what are the challenges? Second of all, taking direction from God, who is our captain, can be tricky, because God's in heaven, I'm on earth. I'm trying to live my life in a way that makes me a good soldier because he's my captain, but that can be kind of tricky. And what are your strategies for being able to take direction from the one who created you when it comes to being a soldier? Because that's, it's not like God, you can look at war and go, yeah, there are a lot of wars fought in the Old Testament. They were actually fought during the times of the New Testament as well. But fortunately, in all of our evolution as human beings, we've been able to eradicate war from our experience. Oh, wait, no, that's not true. Soldiers must also count on other soldiers because, as I mentioned before, it's a team effort. And one thing you learned is that you are at great risk when you try to function alone as a soldier. So we've got to count on our other soldiers. And I don't know, I had relatives that were in the Korean War and then also in World War II. And when I think about the conversations that I had with those people, there was a lot of sacrifice. And a lot of the soldiers that have really given a lot and gone to war for different things were 18, 19, 20 years old. And they were doing things that even myself in my mental maturity right now in my life, I'm not sure that I would even comprehend, how to be able to do that. So the work of a soldier is discipline, and at times it's messy. Now, the work of a farmer, which, here in Iowa, we have a lot of beans, soybeans, and a lot of corn, and then a lot of people have vegetable gardens and stuff like that. The work of a farmer is backbreaking and responsive to the needs of the land. Now, admittedly, now that involves climbing up on big equipment and taking care of equipment and taking care of thousands of acres rather than just 40 acres or whatever. But either way you look at it, the work of a farmer is backbreaking and it's responsive to the needs of the land and the times and the seasons. And every farmer, he or she, must rely upon things over which they have little control. You can plant, you can till, you can do everything you want to do, pick out the right seeds, get it in at the right time. But if the rain doesn't show up, you can't put a hose on it and figure out how to water 500 acres. It's just not possible. So that makes me think of a couple of things about this metaphor of being a farmer from a spiritual man perspective. First of all, the weather's totally an unknown quantity. I have no control over the weather. People like to think we will someday. So far, not a lot of evidence for it. Second of all, farming involves hard and patient work. And cultivating through the planting and the cultivating process, and then taking care of the crop and bringing the crop in and then getting it into storage and then delivered to where it can be made into the products that it needs to. It's hard and it's patient work, and it involves many, many steps when it comes to being a farmer. And this work consequently can be sometimes isolating and a little bit individualistic because you're not doing it as a group. You're kind of the soldiers are all working together. Athletes are at least seeing the other people who are competing, farmers can spend a lot of time alone, with their crops. So that gives me a little bit of insight too, I think, into the metaphor of what it means to be a hard-working farmer. And then the third one in this that we talked about a little bit earlier, most of us have trained for something, a race, a competition, the serious pursuit of an objective. And you know this stuff more than I do, probably. Preparation is mostly rigorous. You don't win any kind of competition unless you work at it, unless you prepare yourself. You can't go run a marathon without working your way toward a marathon. Second of all, it's also important to be able to view the result from the beginning and throughout the pursuit, because if you can't keep your eyes on the prize, your eyes on the goal, it's not very motivating, is it? You have to be able to see the end of the pursuit. And all of that is very mental, and it's very physical, and it's very emotional, as any true athlete will tell you, and even maybe no true athlete like myself. It takes those kinds of disciplines in order to train. And then the other thing about it, whether you're training on a big level for a marathon or you're training on just going for walks in your neighborhood, there is a reward in the process. And the potential outcome that you receive because you devote yourself to that training and accomplish what you set out to do and what you were motivated to do as you cast your vision for that. So all of that together, to me, indicates that a life well lived provides real-time blessing and rewards at the end of it. At least that's my personal, I believe in science, I believe in philosophy, I believe in faith. And faith for me indicates that there will be a reward at the end of the process. And that reminds me of these words of Jesus, and I've kind of put a couple of things together here. His master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master." And I looked up this Greek word, and it basically could be translated maestro. So I get this picture of a conductor, and I don't know if you've been to anything lately related to an orchestra or maybe a college presentation of singers or whatever, but you've got a person up front that has prepared everybody, but then he's directing it, and that's the picture that I get here. I get the picture that God is the maestro. He provides everything that we need to become proficient at what we do, and then we get to play not only our own individual instruments and use our own individual voices, but we get to use them in concert with something bigger than ourselves. And with that, he said to him, and this is over in Luke, "Well done, good servant." Same concept, just a little amplification here. "Because you've been faithful in a very little thing, you will be in authority over 10 cities. And I'll tell you, I don't know what that means. There are a lot of things I don't understand about what Jesus teaches, about what God teaches in the Word of God. But I do know that the metaphor and the picture that's carried all the way through the scriptures is that there is a reward, and that there will be a reward at the end of the race. So, putting that all together, at least in a cursory way with these three metaphors, the soldier fights a good fight, and we do that to please the one who has called called me to be a soldier. And so I asked myself, what's my trajectory on that? I don't fight the same way now that, I'm in the sixth decade of my life, like I did when I was in the second and third decade. But I still fight. I like to tell my grandkids that I fight smarter. I don't fight harder. When I was younger, I fought harder instead of smarter. But the soldier fights the fight to please the one who has called him. And I would ask you the question personally, what's your trajectory, or how is your trajectory? Are you in it? Are you in the fight? And this just doesn't involve just God. It involves everything that God has made. And that includes the people that we love and the people we work with and the purposes of our lives. Excuse me. And then second of all, the farmer faithfully cultivates the soil, waiting on God for rain and sunshine. And I am a cultivator, and I've been cultivating things for a long time. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the rains fall, sometimes the sun shines too much or not enough. But I guess I ask myself the question as my journey unfolds, what's the crop that I'm pursuing? I'm not even sure that I'm working on the same crop. I plant different things now because I'm just different than I was when I was in different phases of my life. But God continues to show me. Out on our patio, I'm looking out right now, and we plant. I don't like tomatoes, but my wife likes tomatoes, so we plant sweet 100s every year, and it produces enough to feed her because I don't need any. And I look at that and I think about, well, that's a crop that I pursue, and I'm a part of that because I want my wife, Bernadette, to be able to enjoy sweet 100s. What's the crop you're producing with your life? And when you think about the different rows that you're cultivating, that you've sown, and that you're working in. Right along with that, the third question, the athlete trains to win, which we've talked about. I guess my question for you and my question for me is, what is your chosen race? What are you running for? Are you running for, having a lot of assets when you're finished with the race that you can pass on to hopefully people that you love? Are you wanting to be able to get your name on a plaque out in front of an art center or something like that? What's your chosen race? Because you are running a race. I'm running a race, and I choose it. I determine what that race is going to be. And I think together, these give us clarity for a well-lived life. And I've got this little emoji in the corner here. Pure heart, know God, do kindness, grow life. We talked about that before, and we'll develop it more in future podcasts. But that is the clarity of a well-lived life. And that's how you find a well-lived life, as a soldier and as a farmer and as an athlete. So my encouragement to you today is to think about those metaphors. Think about yourself. Think about yourself as a soldier and fighting a fight. Think about standing before your captain, however you look at that, and giving an account. Paul talks about no soldier in active service entangles himself in the affairs of everyday life, that he may please the one who called him to become a soldier. That's very poignant to me, because entanglements are so much a part of what life presents to me. And then everybody runs in a race, but only one wins the prize. And I'm not sure we're in a race that only one person can win it. I think there are lots of prizes, because this race is way more complicated than a singular race. And then to the degree that you understand the concept of cultivating and being a farmer, and this thing that this guy's leaning on, by the way, is a shovel, which a lot of people don't even know what that is anymore. But the reality is that, what kind of crops are you growing? How are you running? How are you competing? How are you cultivating? And how are you fighting the good fight of faith? And those three metaphors have been really good for me in my over 6 decades of living, and have made me feel like I have a good chance of standing before the one who made me and hearing the words, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in little things. I will entrust you with many things. Enter into the joy of your master. And I hope that for you too. I hope that's exactly what happens to you. And it's never too late to start that race. I didn't start it until I was 21 years old. There were people who started it earlier. I know people who started it when they were 70. You can run this race. You can fight this fight. You can cultivate your crops, even to a very old age in the last part of your life. So just a few thoughts. Hope they're helpful to you.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. You can find posts and podcasts on tons of subjects at fourthstream.com, along with encouraging music which can be shared by a variety of ages. Finding hope at fourthstream.com.